Beijing Wushu Training Center, Dongcheng District, Beijing. August 14, 1980, Thursday afternoon, 3:20 p.m. The air inside the training hall is heavy with August humidity. 43 people are gathered in a space designed for half that number. Chinese wushu athletes in blue and white uniforms, American martial artists in mismatched GIs, government officials, translators moving between groups. This is part of a cultural exchange program, one of the first since diplomatic relations were normalized between the United States and China. The Cold War is still present, but there are small openings now. The atmosphere is polite, diplomatic, but underneath there is tension. Among the Chinese athletes is a 17-year-old named Li Lianjie. He will later be known to the world as Jet Li, but in August 1980, he is simply a young wushu champion. Five-time national champion in China, which in a nation of 1 billion people means something significant. 5 feet 6 inches, 130 pounds, lean from training 6 hours daily since age 8. The American visitors watched his earlier demonstration with appreciation, some with skepticism. Beautiful, athletic, but practical? That was the question several had been quietly debating. But what most people in that room did not know was that 12 of the people present were not there by accident. 12 members of the Chinese State Wushu Committee had quietly positioned themselves throughout the training hall, scattered naturally among the crowd. They were there to observe, to test something, not Jet Li. They already knew what he could do. They were testing how the Americans would respond to traditional Chinese martial arts. Among the American delegation was a man who stood out even in a group of physically impressive athletes, David Morrison, though that may not have been his actual name. What witnesses agree on: 32 years old, 6 feet 1 inch, 195 pounds of conditioned muscle, 4th-degree black belt in American full-contact karate, undefeated in his weight class for 3 years. His style was hard, direct, practical, military background. He carried himself with the certainty of someone who had tested his skills under pressure and never been found wanting. During the wushu demonstration, Morrison had watched Jet Li perform a complex Taolu form. Impressive, skillful, but Morrison's expression suggested skepticism. When the floor opened for questions, Morrison raised his hand. His question, translated carefully, was challenging. He wanted to know about practical application. How did these techniques work against resistance? In full-contact karate, every technique proved itself in the ring, under pressure. He meant no disrespect, but he had seen traditional styles that looked impressive in demonstration but failed in actual combat. The room went quiet. Jet Li showed no reaction. Calm, steady breathing. He waited to see how his coaches would respond. One of the senior coaches addressed Morrison's question, acknowledging that demonstration and combat were different, but suggesting that perhaps the American understanding of effective technique was limited. Speed, timing, precision, body mechanics, these were universal principles in all effective martial arts. Morrison listened, nodded politely, but remained unconvinced. What happened next would be debated for years, with different witnesses offering different versions. Someone suggested a demonstration. Morrison would attack seriously. Jet Li would respond using only wushu. No rules, no points. Private, no photographs. Morrison agreed immediately. The Chinese officials conferred briefly. Jet Li nodded once, accepting. The senior coach established parameters, 3 minutes maximum. Morrison would attempt to strike or take down Jet Li. Jet Li would respond defensively, but would not injure. The crowd rearranged itself, creating clear space. Morrison removed his shoes, rolled his shoulders. Jet Li performed a brief salute, then settled into a neutral stance, hands relaxed, weight evenly distributed. The contrast was striking. Morrison, compact and muscled, radiating power. Jet Li, small and lean, almost fragile. 75 pounds of muscle advantage, years of full contact experience versus tournament wushu. To most observers, this looked like a mismatch. But what those observers could not see, what only became apparent in the next 3 minutes, was the difference between trained reflexes and cultivated understanding. Morrison had spent years developing powerful techniques, learning to hit hard, to dominate space through physical presence. Jet Li had spent 9 years training not just techniques, but principles, learning to read movement before it happened, to respond faster than conscious thought, to use minimum force to create maximum effect. The senior coach looked at both participants, received confirmation from each, and spoke a single word in Chinese. Begin. Morrison moved first, advancing with controlled footwork. His hands came up into a boxing guard. Jet Li adjusted his angle slightly, moving offline, creating a diagonal relationship. His hands rose naturally, open palms, controlling centerline. His eyes focused on Morrison's chest, center of mass, where all movement originates. Morrison threw a quick jab. Jet Li's hand redirected it by millimeters. Second punch, faster, more committed. Jet Li's weight shifted, the punch passed through empty space. 3 exchanges in 10 seconds, low kick, combination punches. Jet Li moved through them like smoke, precision timing, his hands making brief contact, redirecting, controlling angles, never opposing force. Morrison was starting to understand. His techniques landed where he intended, but Jet Li was not there when they arrived. He increased his pace. Front kick, spinning back fist, low sweep. Jet Li responded without apparent effort, movements so efficient they barely registered. 40 seconds had elapsed. Morrison was breathing harder, frustrated at being unable to land clean contact. The crowd watched in silence. Then Morrison decided to change his approach. Pure aggression now, the strategy that had won championships. He launched a full combination, everything he had, using his size, reach, power. What happened next became the moment that witnesses would describe differently depending on their perspective, their training, their understanding of martial arts. But certain details remained consistent across all accounts. Jet Li did not retreat. He moved forward into Morrison's attack, which violated every instinct that Western martial arts taught. But Jet Li moved in, closing distance at the exact moment when Morrison's techniques were generating maximum force, which meant they were also at maximum commitment, minimum ability to adjust. His right hand made contact with Morrison's leading arm, not a strike, not a block, but a precise touch at the inside of the elbow, redirecting the punch's angle. His left hand simultaneously controlled Morrison's shoulder, and suddenly Morrison's entire structure was compromised. His weight was forward, his balance was broken. Jet Li's hand moved to a point on Morrison's upper arm, approximately 2 inches above the elbow, on the outer edge where the tricep meets the bone. Witnesses later disagreed on whether it was a strike or a press, whether there was significant force or just precise placement. What they agreed on was the result. Morrison's arm went momentarily dead. Not paralyzed, not injured, but unresponsive for perhaps 2 seconds, the muscles simply stopped obeying commands. Morrison later described to some of the American delegation that the sensation was like hitting your funny bone, that strange combination of numbness and shock. Except this was in his tricep, and it happened instantly, without warning. His legs, still committed to his attacking combination, lost their coordination. His knee buckled slightly, not dramatically, just a momentary loss of structure. And in that moment, Jet Li's other hand touched a point on Morrison's leg, just above the knee, another precise placement. Morrison went to one knee. Not thrown, not swept, not struck down. His body simply stopped supporting him properly. His muscles refused to maintain tension, and he sank down onto his right knee on the concrete floor. He was conscious, aware, not in pain, just shocked. His body was not responding the way it should. 2 minutes and 15 seconds had elapsed since the demonstration began. Jet Li stepped back immediately, giving space, his expression unchanged, calm, focused, steady breathing. Morrison remained on one knee for 5 seconds. His muscular control was returning. He stood slowly, tested his weight. Everything worked, nothing injured, but something fundamental had shifted. He looked at Jet Li. Recognition. Morrison had been hit hard by professional fighters, but he had never experienced this, where his body simply stopped obeying him, not from damage, but from precision. Morrison extended his hand. Jet Li shook it. Morrison's question was genuine. "What did you do?" Jet Li responded through the translator. "The principle is not force. The principle is understanding. The body has points where structure connects, where nerves transmit signals. You are very strong, but strength does not matter if I do not oppose your strength. I touch points where your strength cannot protect you." The senior Chinese coach spoke to the room, first in Mandarin, then translation. He explained this was an example of dim mock principles, understanding of pressure points developed in Chinese martial arts for centuries. Not magic, just anatomy, neurology, understanding how the body functions and where it can be disrupted. Jet Li had trained these techniques since childhood. The timing, the sensitivity, finding the exact moment where minimal force creates maximum effect. Morrison asked if he could train with Jet Li during the remainder of the exchange. The request was approved. For 6 days, Morrison attended training sessions, learning basic principles of traditional Chinese martial arts. Understanding his full-contact karate was effective but incomplete. The demonstration was never officially recorded. No photographs, no video, no formal report. The only evidence comes from the 43 witnesses present in that training hall on August 14, 1980. Accounts vary in details, but the core narrative remains consistent. A 17-year-old wushu champion demonstrated techniques a professional fighter had never encountered, using principles most Western martial artists did not know existed. Morrison returned to the United States and continued competing, but those who trained with him noticed changes. More interest in sensitivity training, body mechanics, precision over power. He never spoke publicly about Beijing, maintaining the private nature of the demonstration. Jet Li continued into film, becoming one of the most recognized martial arts actors in the world. He rarely discussed the 1980 cultural exchange. August 14, 1980. Beijing Wushu Training Center. 43 witnesses. 2 minutes and 15 seconds that challenged assumptions, bridged cultures, demonstrated that martial arts mastery transcends style and nationality. The story remains disputed by those who were not there, dismissed by those who do not believe pressure point techniques work, and remembered clearly by those who witnessed a 17-year-old demonstrate knowledge most martial artists spend lifetimes seeking. The cameras were off. The official history does not acknowledge it happened, but those who were there know what they saw.